You've been lied to about what transformation feels like. Every self-help guru, every motivational post, every success story painted a picture of growth as this triumphant march forward, the phoenix rising, the butterfly emerging, the hero ascending. But nobody told you the truth. Nobody told you that real growth feels like grief, like something precious is dying inside you, like you're losing your mind, because you are losing something, the version of you that no longer fits. And that loss, it's supposed to hurt. The discomfort you feel when your old beliefs crumble, when relationships that once defined you fall away, when you no longer recognize yourself in the mirror, that's not failure. That's the price of evolution. Psychologists call it the process of ego death, and it's the most misunderstood experience in personal development. Today, we're going to explore why the path to becoming who you're meant to be feels exactly like losing who you've always been. And more importantly, why that feeling is the only proof that it's actually working. The grief of growth. Here's something they don't put in the motivational posters. Growth and grief are neurologically identical experiences. When you lose someone you love, your brain goes through a process of reorganization. Neural pathways that connected you to that person have to be rewired. The same thing happens when you outgrow a version of yourself. Your brain literally mourns the death of your former identity. Psychologist Robert Kegan spent decades studying adult development and discovered something remarkable. Every major stage of growth requires a previous stage to die. You can't add new understanding on top of old understanding. You have to dismantle the old framework entirely. Think about what you believed at 15, really believed, about relationships, about success, about who you were. Now imagine that 15-year-old meeting you today. They wouldn't just disagree with your choices, they'd be horrified, because you killed them. Every act of creation is first an act of destruction. That teenager had to die for you to exist. And right now, there's a version of you that needs to die for the next version to emerge. That discomfort you're feeling, it's not a sign that something's wrong. It's the labor pain of who you're becoming. Identity death. Carl Jung called it the dissolution of the persona, that terrifying moment when the mask you've worn your entire life starts to crack. You've spent years constructing an identity. You're the responsible one, the funny one, the successful one, the strong one. These aren't just descriptions, they're load-bearing walls in the architecture of your psyche. And growth requires demolition. I want you to think about a time when you changed something fundamental about yourself. Maybe you left a religion, ended a long relationship, changed careers. Do you remember how it felt in your body? That hollow sensation in your chest, the vertigo of not knowing who you are anymore, the strange grief for a life you chose to leave behind. That feeling has a name. It's called identity disruption, and it's completely normal. Researchers at UCLA found that our brains process threats to our identity the same way they process physical threats. Your body literally goes into survival mode when your sense of self is challenged. This is why people resist change even when they know it's good for them. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between danger and transformation. If you've been feeling resistance to growth that you can't explain, you're not weak. Your brain is protecting you. But here's the truth that changes everything. Outgrowing people. Perhaps the most painful aspect of growth is watching relationships dissolve. Not because of betrayal or conflict, but simply because you're no longer the same person who formed them. You've probably experienced this. A friendship that once felt like home now feels like a house that doesn't fit anymore. Conversations that used to energize you now drain you. And you feel guilty for it, like you're abandoning people who did nothing wrong. Here's what nobody tells you. Every relationship is actually a contract between two specific versions of people at a specific moment in time. When one person evolves and the other doesn't, the original contract becomes void. This isn't abandonment. It's honoring your own growth while acknowledging that not everyone is meant to journey with you forever. Some people are meant for a chapter, not the whole book. Dr. Judith Viast wrote extensively about what she called necessary losses. The people, beliefs, and identities we must release to continue developing. She argued that refusing to let go doesn't prevent loss. It just prevents growth while keeping you trapped in chronic grief for something already gone. If you've been feeling guilty about outgrowing relationships, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring the depths of your psyche with me, because what comes next explains why this guilt is misplaced and how to navigate these transitions with compassion. Burning beliefs. Your beliefs aren't just thoughts, they are the operating system of your reality, and growth often requires a complete system crash. Think about a belief you held with absolute certainty 5 years ago that you no longer believe. Maybe it was about politics, about religion, about what makes a good relationship, about your own capabilities. Now notice what happened in the space between believing it and not believing it. There was a period, maybe weeks, maybe months, where you felt untethered, lost, like the ground beneath you had disappeared. Psychologists call this liminality the threshold space between one reality and another, and it feels like madness because you temporarily exist nowhere. The anthropologist Victor Turner studied rites of passage across cultures and found that every society understood this. You can't become something new while still fully being something old. There must be a death, a dissolution, a burning of the old self before the new one can emerge. The problem with modern life is that we've pathologized this process. We call it anxiety, depression, crisis. We medicate it, we try to skip it, but you cannot bypass the fire. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. The beliefs causing you the most cognitive dissonance right now, those are the ones ready to burn. The void between. There's a terrifying place that exists between who you were and who you're becoming. A void where you're nobody, where all your old answers don't work anymore, but you haven't found new ones yet. This is where most people turn back. We've been conditioned to fear uncertainty more than anything else. Our entire society is built on the illusion of stable identity, your name, your job title, your role in your family. When these things shake, we panic. We scramble back to the familiar, even when the familiar was suffocating us. Fear of the unknown trumps misery of the known. But here's what the mystics and the psychologists both understand. The void is not empty. It's pregnant with possibility. The philosopher Martin Heidegger called it the clearing, a space where new ways of being can emerge precisely because old ways have dissolved. Potential. Every caterpillar dissolves into cellular soup before becoming a butterfly. There's a period where it's neither caterpillar nor butterfly, it's formless potential. If you're in the void right now, if you don't know who you are anymore, if your old life doesn't fit but your new life hasn't arrived, you're not lost. You're in the most fertile phase of transformation. The question is whether you can tolerate the discomfort long enough to let something new emerge. Resistance decoded. Why do we fight so hard against the very growth we consciously desire? The answer lies in a psychological concept called homeostasis. Your psyche, like your body, craves stability above all else. Even dysfunctional stability. Even painful stability. Your unconscious mind has spent years building defense mechanisms, coping strategies, and identity structures. It doesn't care if they're healthy, it cares that they're familiar. The devil you know feels safer than the angel you don't. This is why people stay in abusive relationships, why they remain in soul-crushing jobs, why they repeat the same destructive patterns generation after generation. The known horror is neurologically less threatening than unknown possibility. Freud called it the repetition compulsion, the strange drive to recreate familiar suffering rather than risk unfamiliar freedom. So when you feel massive resistance to growth, understand what's actually happening. Your unconscious is trying to protect you from the perceived danger of change, even when that change would save your life. The resistance isn't your enemy. It's a misguided guardian. The question becomes, how do you negotiate with a part of yourself that would rather you stay small than risk the unknown? Small deaths daily. The Stoics had a practice they called memento mori, remember that you will die, but there's a deeper practice that's even more relevant to growth. Memento mutari, remember that you will change. Every single day, you're dying and being reborn in microscopic ways. The you that woke up this morning is not the you reading this right now. Cells have died. Synapses have formed. You've had experiences that slightly altered your neural architecture. Growth becomes terrifying only when we resist these small deaths, and let them accumulate into one massive, overwhelming transformation. Digest change in small bites daily. The Zen tradition speaks of dying before you die, consciously releasing attachments before they are ripped away by circumstance. Every night, can you let go of who you were that day? Every morning, can you rise as someone slightly new? No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. This isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Research on neuroplasticity shows that your brain is literally a different organ than it was a year ago. You are not who you were. You will not be who you are. The question is whether you'll partner with this process or fight against the current of your own evolution. Grief as compass. Here's a radical reframe that might change everything. What if the grief you feel during growth is actually guidance? What if the intensity of the loss points directly to the significance of the transformation? Think about it. You don't grieve things that don't matter. The deeper the grief, the deeper the attachment. And the deeper the attachment being released, the more profound the growth occurring. Your pain is proportional to your expansion. Psychologist Susan David talks about emotional agility, the ability to experience difficult emotions without being controlled by them. She argues that emotions are data, not directives. The grief of growth isn't telling you to stop. It's telling you that something significant is happening. It's your psyche's way of honoring what's passing, of holding a funeral for the self that's dying. When you feel that hollow ache of transformation, don't run from it. Don't numb it. Don't pathologize it. Ask it, what are you mourning? What attachment is being released? What version of myself is passing so a new one can emerge? The grief is not the enemy of growth. It's proof that you're doing it right. It's the compass pointing toward your evolution. The return home. Joseph Campbell mapped the hero's journey and found the same pattern across every culture's mythology: separation, initiation, return. The hero leaves home, faces trials, transforms, and returns changed. But here's what most people miss about the return. The hero doesn't come back to the same home. They come back to a home they can finally see clearly. After transformation, everything looks different because you are different. The relationships that survived your growth become deeper. The work that aligns with your truth becomes more meaningful. The sense of self that emerges is not fragile like the old one, it's flexible, adaptable. It knows how to die and be reborn because it's done it before. Return means integration, not regression. The psychologist Carl Rogers spoke of becoming a fully functioning person, someone who is comfortable with continuous change, because they've stopped identifying with any fixed version of themselves. They've learned to hold their identity loosely, to be both consistent and evolving. This is the gift waiting on the other side of the grief. A self that doesn't need protection because it knows it can always rebuild. The fear of loss disappears when you've survived it enough times to know you're the thing that survives. Embrace the death. So where does this leave you? Right now, in this moment, there's likely a version of you that's dying, an identity that's crumbling, beliefs that are burning, relationships that are dissolving, and it hurts. God, does it hurt? But I want you to consider something. Surrender. What if, instead of fighting the death, you embraced it? What if you held a funeral for who you used to be, mourned them properly, honored what they survived, thanked them for getting you this far, and then let them go? Transformation doesn't become easier when you understand it, but it becomes possible to trust, possible to endure the grief knowing it's not meaningless suffering, it's the cost of evolution. We must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. The version of you that could watch this video didn't exist 5 years ago. The version of you that will look back on this moment doesn't exist yet. You are perpetually becoming. The grief you feel isn't a sign of failure. It's the feeling of becoming. And becoming, as painful as it is the most sacred thing a human being can do. Real growth doesn't feel like victory. It feels like mourning, like vertigo, like losing your mind while finding your soul. And now that you understand this, you can stop fighting it. You can stop wondering if something's wrong when transformation hurts. You can stop expecting growth to feel good and start expecting it to feel true. Feel the grief, trust the process. Because the ache you feel when old beliefs crumble, when relationships fall away, when you no longer recognize yourself, that's not breakdown. That's breakthrough wearing its work clothes. If you made it this far, comment "dying to live" if you're ready to embrace the grief of becoming. The version of you that's dying right now, thank them. They did their best. But it's time to let them rest so the next chapter of your existence can begin. Welcome to the Psyche Project. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe for more. Understanding yourself is the work of a lifetime.